Thanks. Okay. Sorry to keep you. So this morning I'd like to address two significant events in the past day or so, but certainly there have been a number of events over the past few years related to public education, specifically in Philadelphia, but also across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. First, in Harrisburg yesterday, a coalition of more than 40 organizations kicked off the Campaign for Fair Education Funding, an effort to ensure that every student has access to a quality education no matter where they live in Pennsylvania. I participated in that announcement in obviously two capacities, or maybe only obviously in one. Certainly as mayor of the city of Philadelphia, but also I currently serve as the president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. The Pennsylvania Municipal League is a statewide organization of elected leaders, mostly mayors and city council members and other municipal officials, focused on a variety of public policy issues all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Municipal League held its convention here in Philadelphia during the summer. We passed two resolutions related to education. One, calling for full and fair funding and a student-weighted funding formula for educating our young people across Pennsylvania. And the second was support for universal pre-K, both of which are major issues in the Commonwealth, and the Pennsylvania Municipal League supports both of them. The second issue from yesterday is the School Reform Commission's unanimous vote yesterday to require PFT members to contribute to the cost of their health care benefits so that the school district can in fact provide more money and invest in our students and their educations directly in the classroom. On the Campaign for Fair Education Funding, I'm honored to be aligned with this diverse group of organizations that aim to work with parents and community members throughout the state to send a message to our state legislators and the governor that fair funding for all public schools must be the top priority for this year and decades to come. The launch of this campaign coincides with the ongoing work of the Basic Education Funding Commission, was created by the General Assembly, and the widespread recognition that more and more school districts across Pennsylvania are facing serious negative financial consequences and circumstances as they move forward. I'd like to thank our Philadelphia delegation and our many elected members throughout the region, but especially our own Philadelphia City Council, for the numerous measures that have been taken that have been approved by varying bodies to address some of the financial challenges facing our own Philadelphia school district. The legislature's recent passage of the bill authorizing the $2 pack cigarette tax, which went into effect on October 1st, and the extension of our city's 1% sales tax will help to reduce some of the district's financial instability. However, these measures are not sufficient to ensure that all Philadelphia students achieve at high levels and they are ready for college or work, nor will this bring the long-term fiscal stability to our school district. In short, Philadelphia students are still without the funds they need to succeed. But here in Philadelphia, we have stepped up to the challenge of the school funding crisis over the last 6 years. And as this document shows, which will be released immediately, it's entitled State and Local Funding to the School District of Philadelphia, including the cigarette tax. As this document shows, we have increased the local annual contribution to educating students in our public schools, both district and charter managed, by $357 million over the last 5 to 6 years. That is by far the largest increase in the local contribution to educating students in the last 30 years. That is work that was done in this building. Our administration, working with City Council and the leadership of Council President Clark and the many members of City Council, we have put $357 million of additional recurring new funding into educating our students here in Philadelphia. That is a 42% increase since FY09. Our city taxpayers now pay a higher percent of district costs than they have in any time in the last 30 years. The City of Philadelphia's contribution to educating students is now 47%. 47% of the funding that goes to the School District of Philadelphia. It is the highest percentage, the highest ratio in 30 years. These new dollars have come from property tax increases, a use and occupancy tax increase, parking fee increases, the new extended 1% sales tax, the new cigarette tax, and improved delinquent tax collections. Local taxpayers, Philadelphians, parents have done their part year after year after year after year. We have been in virtually every one of their pockets trying to generate additional dollars to fund education for our students here in Philadelphia. The school district has also done its part. They've unfortunately had to cut 5,000 positions from the school district in the last few years. They've closed 32 schools, renegotiated contracts with their blue-collar union and their principals union. These changes have impacted thousands and thousands and thousands of students and teachers and district employees, resulting in deep salary cuts and new contributions to health care premiums to help pay for those health care costs. The school funding crisis has affected virtually every person in this city in one way, shape, or form. We are trapped in an ongoing, seemingly never-ending battle to make it through the current school year or whether or not we're going to be able to open schools safely and educationally sound. Yesterday, we saw the latest dire manifestation of a public school funding crisis, again, that not only affects Philadelphia, but also the entire Commonwealth. The SRC did one of the few things left for it to do in order to get desperately needed services back into our schools. They asked their teachers and counselors and others in the PFT to contribute to the cost of their health care in order to save money and reinvest those dollars in our students' education. As I've already said, principals and janitors alike taken pay cuts over the last 2 years. They have already agreed to similar health care benefit changes. I support this and hope others can see it for what it is, another consequence of the horrible situation our schools have had to face, and more importantly, our students, our parents, and our teachers have had to face these kinds of situations year after year after year. I'm pleased that Dr. Haidt has chosen to reinvest many of the dollars from these savings right back into the classrooms, and that our schools and our principals will have a great deal to say in determining how this reinvestment will be used in their buildings. I've been in many of our schools, as all of you know, over many, many years, even before, of course, being mayor. But in more recent times, I've spent even more time in schools, talking to students, talking to teachers, talking to principals, talking to parents and community leaders. I've been in many, many schools and know what our students are doing without. And I also know what our teachers are doing without. I see how hard they are working. I know their commitment. I know their passion. I know their integrity, day after day after day, even with limited, and in some instances, no resources to provide the high-quality education they passionately want to give as professionals to their students. Teachers are, in fact, the backbone of any education system. There is not one successful person that I've ever talked to who at some point in their life, no matter what school they went to, what kind of system they went to, there's not one successful person that I've ever talked to who hasn't had at least one great teacher in their life that helped to point them in the right direction, to give them new focus, to give them inspiration. And I'm certainly a standing example of that myself. In some small way, this reinvestment will actually make conditions somewhat better for our students and our teachers in their schools each and every day. This action cannot and should not be looked upon as an attack on our teachers. It is, in fact, an effort to save money and educate our students. What it's indicative of is the fact that our education funding system is badly broken. It cannot get fixed with time after time Band-Aid approaches, temporary fixes, and stopgap measures. One striking example of the struggles that our schools face each and every day is Principal Linda Carroll of Northeast High School. Let me give you an example. She has a total operations budget for 3,000 students of $15,000. That comes out, of course, in the simple math to $5 per student to pay for basic supplies required for the fundamental kind of needs for education during the course of the school year. $5 in additional supplies and equipment per student. Last spring, as I reported to you many, many times on the listening tour, went to George Washington High School in the far Northeast. There, talking to students and parents and teachers, we found that there was one counselor for a school of more than 650 students. That's inexcusable. By requiring our teachers to contribute to healthcare costs, additional resources, like counselors, can be added back into the classroom to prevent the educational calamity that Philadelphia Public School students and their teachers face on a daily basis. At Bartram High School, 1,100 students, 2 counselors when they used to have 4, 1 nurse for 1,100 students. Unacceptable. It is my hope that both the school district and the PFT will get back to active bargaining and negotiations as soon as possible so that they can resolve any of the additional outstanding issues in these long contract negotiations. Yesterday, with the launch of the campaign for fair education funding in Harrisburg, I heard again and again from other districts across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania the list of cuts and hardships in rural, urban, and suburban districts is as devastating out there as it is right here at home. Philadelphia is not the only school district in these tough and challenging economic circumstances. This is not just a Philadelphia issue or problem. This is a statewide problem that demands a statewide solution. And so I'm going to say it one more time, and I'll end with this. The way forward, the pathway forward, the key to any success for educational attainment is for all schools in Pennsylvania to receive full and fair funding. A formula that is student-weighted, that takes into account how many students are actually on the rolls. What are the needs and challenges of those students? How many of those students have English as a second language? How many live in poverty? How many are special education students? How many have intellectual disabilities? How far do they live away from the school? And many other criteria, like the other 47 states in the United States of America that use a student-weighted funding formula. Pennsylvania is one of only 3 states in the country that does not use a student-weighted funding formula. The time has come. How much more tragedy? How much more devastation? How many more students and generations of students have to be harmed before the General Assembly and the Governor come up with a fair and full funding formula that is student-weighted and takes into account the challenges and needs and differences of the 500 school districts across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let that be the focus of the conversation and debate now, even in an election season, and going forward. The students, their parents, our teachers can't wait any longer. We need full and fair funding, we need a student-weighted funding formula, and we need it right now. With that, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Mayor, many of the critics, including some public school advocates in the PFT, are critical of the manner in which the School Reform Commission hastily called this meeting. They put a small blurb in the newspaper on Sunday. They didn't put anything on their website. Both parents, advocate groups, and the PFT were caught by surprise by the manner in which they put it together. They didn't even have people at the meeting.
What's the question?
Well, your thoughts on could it have been explained more in a different fashion?
As best I understand, the School Reform Commission followed whatever notice requirements are required under the law. Beyond that, I think the action really does speak for itself. It is the action that they took, I think, is ultimately most upsetting to folks. And I don't know how many people were there. As I mentioned, I was in Harrisburg yesterday morning. So, I will certainly raise that issue with the School Reform Commission, but I think at the end of the day, and the bottom line here is some action needed to be taken. Dollars need to be reinvested in our schools for our students. This is an action that was taken to put dollars and resources and personnel back in the classroom. And I don't know that when all is said and done, that any of the folks who are upset about this would feel any different about it if the meeting had been conducted in the middle of Broad Street at noon. The action is the action, and the action, unfortunately, was necessary given the fact that the system is broken. There is no more money to be had from anywhere. At the moment, we're in a fiscal year, so there's no more money coming from the city. It's clear there's no more coming at the moment from the state. And if I take you back a couple years, there has always been a discussion about the city putting forward X amount of dollars, and we've done a lot, as I laid out. The state putting forward X amount of dollars, and we can discuss and debate that one, and savings from contract negotiations with the unions. 32BJ and the principals have negotiated contracts, and they have taken cuts, and there have been savings. Contract negotiations with the PFT have been going on since sometime last spring in 2013. I think we're about 18 plus months into these negotiations, 100 plus some odd meetings with a state mediator actively engaged and involved, and it appears not much is going on. So look, it's not the proudest moment in the city's history. There should be no jumping for joy about what has taken place. I think the action is indicative of the dire circumstance, the tragedy of what's going on in the classroom. We need to stay focused on who is the most important part of all this. It's students. Let's focus on our young people. Let's make sure they get the resources that they can. And everyone in a shared sacrifice environment has to put something on the table. We've been through this on the city side, and we're now going through this on the school district side. So, I will certainly, raise the issue about notice and advertising and all of those kinds of issues, but that is not going to change the financial picture of a district that, even with all the resources that we've put forward and the actions that have been taken by the state to authorize a couple of these things, they still have a deficit. They're still in dire economic circumstance. They need to get as much savings as they can from wherever they can get them from and put them back in the classroom. And we haven't even reached a point in the discussion where we can talk about investment on top of filling deficit holes. When are we going to get to that discussion? When are we going to put some teachers back in classrooms and have more counseling and nursing services and more after-school activities and programs, and not year after year after year wonder in June and July and August, are schools going to open on time and safely? When is this madness going to end? When are we actually going to do something that is longer term in nature than, let me pass this and fill that hole, let me pass this and fill that hole? We can't spend all of our time filling holes. At some point in time, if I use an analogy of construction, You know, you got a big hole, you start building a foundation. At some point in time, the concrete and the steel start coming out of the ground. We're still trying to fill a hole 5 years into it. This is insane. Next question. I got a call over the weekend informing me that this kind of action would more than likely take place on Monday.
Talk to him about what PFT is doing and what's your sense there?
I have not had a conversation with Jerry Jordan in the last 24, 48 hours. We had a meeting, I guess, a couple weeks back. It was at the same time that the national president, Randy Weingarten, was in town. I think there was a training program. She was the guest speaker, and I met with her and Jerry and some of their other folks back at that time. I had a conversation with the national president yesterday about this. We had a discussion with regard to yesterday's actions, which I'm not going to go into what that conversation was about. We've known each other for a long time. Obviously, they're certainly not pleased. And I mean, I don't like a lot of things about where we are and what has happened. But I'm staying focused on making sure that every possible action that I can take related to education funding and the quality of education that our students receive, that I believe is my main mission, and that will be my focus. Any other questions?
Mayor, Jerry Jordan says these teachers are not indentured servants, that shouldn't have part of the bargaining
Process, and obviously they're going to Commonwealth Court saying their contract should be frozen status quo. That's contract law.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've obviously entered the realm of there will be a test of the powers that the SRC believes that they have. They've been advised by their lawyers. The PFT will have their view. They're being advised by their lawyers. You know as well as I do, with every respect to people in that profession, if you ask two lawyers the same question, you will more than likely get 3 different answers. This will ultimately be decided in the courts. Teaching is, I believe, one of the most important and honorable professions. It is critical to an educated society. I can't tell you exactly what was in at the end of whatever the SRC's process was, but I think, as I laid out earlier, if you look at how long this has been going on, 18 plus months, 100 plus some odd negotiating sessions or interactions involving a state mediator, the length of time this has been taking place, the fact that we were barely able to open schools on time and somewhat safely, and the fact that they are still facing a deficit and desperately need money. On the one hand, I'm not sure what else the SRC could have done. Having said that, and I said this yesterday, so it didn't make it in the paper today, hopefully it will, it is always my belief, and we've been down this road ourselves, but it is always my belief that it is certainly better to negotiate through the collective bargaining process a contract. That is the preferred route. It is my personal fundamental belief that you should always try to negotiate and reach, if not an agreement, at least a contract, which often neither side is particularly thrilled about, but you signed a document and you go forward. We found ourselves as a city government somewhat in the same position some time ago. We ultimately did, sign a contract, but there just comes a point where some other action or whatever else you have left, you have to explore every possible option. This is not the preferred route, but it is where we are. Again, to go back to your original question, each side will have its view. about what that power and authority is under the state takeover legislation. It's my hope that there will actually be a final determination of what that power is, because I think all of us have operated to some extent with a little bit of mystery around we know what the words say. The issue now is, what do they mean? How they get interpreted, and what is the final, what's the final answer to the question that is being asked. But we're in a very bad circumstance, and ultimately, especially given what the city has done over the past few years, there's no escaping. I hear all this commentary going back and forth about, who's contributed what and what the state has done or what the state hasn't done, and we have all this, theoretical debate and discussion going on. As I said yesterday, there really is no debate about the fact that when you have less money than you had before, that's a cut. I mean, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure that out. Any math you use, if you had more at one point in time and now you have less, you took a cut. Funding has been cut by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There should be no debate about that. There's no mystery about that. The facts are the facts. The numbers are the numbers. They're right on a sheet of paper that anybody can see, black and white, or we have color copies, if you want a better look at it. Funding was cut by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They bear that responsibility. And so pre-recession, post-recession, decisions were made. That's what this business is all about. It's about making decisions. And so people have to decide for themselves when they see the facts as to what they are and do their own calculation and analysis. But funding was cut by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There is no escaping that fact. You can spin it however you want. There's no escaping the fact. Any other questions? Great. Thank you.